All right.
Ooh,
And
fantastic.
cool.
So yeah, as far as everything goes, it's less of an interview, more of a conversation. Not really going for any gotcha moments. So is there anything that I should steer away from, or anything that? Um,
I'm really not into politics.
okay.
It's just not my thing.
Yeah, I would say a lot of podcasts since Joe Rogan came out, a lot of people think that others care about what they think about politics because they're famous and or they're on a podcast. I tend to try to stay in my lane and the things that I know about. So yeah, it's more it will be more being a master on your life. That's what I'm more interested in. I did have someone that she was in politics, so then we definitely went there, but definitely not going to steer in that direction for most people.
Cool. Yeah, that's the only thing that pops to mind.
Okay, cool,
Yeah.
wonderful. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we'll start off where everybody else does. What was it like growing up, as far as from when you can remember to like middle school? What activities were you into? Sports, music? What did you have going on?
Man, when I was that little, I mean, I was into gardening. I
Okay,
loved gardening. I was into wood carving.
very cool.
I spent a lot of time on the water. We grew up about 5 minutes from the beach, so the islands were sort of our playground.
Great. Which beach?
Um, what's that?
Which area demographic wise?
Yeah, I grew up. Sorry, I grew up in Florida, St. Pete, Tampa area of Florida,
Oh, great.
and yeah, we were about 5 minutes from the beach.
Hmm.
Beautiful beaches over in that area, and we always had a boat of some kind. It might have been a terrible one, but we never didn't have a boat.
That's good.
Yeah, yeah. So we would go island hopping, go camping.
Mm.
I was just thinking about this earlier today. Is we would camp with as little as you could.
Yeah.
We would go with a styrofoam cooler and hot dogs and a towel, and
Wow.
that was the camping trip.
That's impressive.
Oh,
So
and
it
matches, of
okay.
course. Gotta have matches.
So is that was that a day trip? Was that a couple day trip? Just what do you have going on
If there
there?
were hot dogs, you could go for 2 days for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you have a tent and everything?
No, no, it's an island. You're safe.
Hey, very true.
Yeah.
So the gardening and all that stuff was that through groups that you're in? Was that your family's influence? Where'd that come from?
So I grew up homeschooled.
Okay.
So it was I got very used to sort of solo activities.
Yeah.
I was the youngest of three. I
Mm-hmm.
had two older brothers, and they were old enough that I had some alone time. So I
Yeah.
got pretty comfortable with just doing things on my own, learning on my own. So when I would pick up a hobby, I would know how to learn it, which
Yeah.
which is a wonderful thing,
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't even realize was an advantage at the time. I
Yes.
didn't realize that other people didn't have that.
Right.
Um, but once you know it, you're like, oh man, that's so good to have that. It's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. So I got really obsessed with gardening as a little kid, and it started with gardening. Then, because I loved the water, I started to get interested in like fish ponds, and then
Cool.
aquaculture, and I'd sort of go down that rabbit hole. And it's like I remember, like as a 12-year-old, being so obsessed with the change in the chemistry through a
Yeah.
biological filter, how
Mm-hmm.
you could turn water that nothing could live in to
Yeah.
livable water, just through healthy bacteria growth.
That's super cool. So
uh,
how would that manifest? Was that like a pond in the backyard? Was that a pond you'd go to? Where did
yep.
these things take place?
Yeah, I gardened for a long time, and then eventually I convinced my mom or dad to get me a pond liner, I think, and a pump. I think that was what we financed. Yeah, that was it.
Nice.
Man, it's been a while. And I think I spent age like 14 and 15 digging.
Wow.
Or I spent a summer digging, I
Yeah.
think. there was a very clayey area in the
Mm.
yard, and I made like a pretty big koi pond, and it's there to this day. And I
That's
go back.
awesome.
My parents still live there, and the thing it actually I'm fairly proud about it. And the thing I'm the happiest about is it looks better today than it did when I made it.
Really?
And that's actually a life thing for me, is I
Hmm.
like things that build over time.
Yeah.
Is it aged really well, and
Hmm.
I had some inclination of that even at that young age, where I would do things when I was building even that, where I would think in terms of, okay, I want this to not have to be fixed again tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's a mentality I've found myself approaching a lot of my life, is wanting to play the long game.
Hmm. So do you think that was just a combination of learning all these types of things, or was it someone that you saw that kind of pushed this upon you or suggested it, or was a kind of accumulation of things?
I don't know what kicked it off, but it feels inherent,
Yeah.
where it's a part of my identity and part
Hmm.
of like what I'm drawn to. I've from a very young age been drawn to potential, leverage, and connection.
Hmm.
I've tried to like sort it out to some degree, and those things I'm really drawn to, and time is a big factor when it comes to, potential
Yes.
and leverage, especially,
Hmm.
and connections can deepen over time. But like when I was a kid playing video games, which I didn't play a lot of, uh, but well, I guess I didn't even really play video games, but I played computer games, and
Yeah.
somebody gave me Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Great game.
Such a
Wonderful
great
game.
gift that I'm still friends with him today. But what I would always do with Roller Coaster Tycoon, and I did the same thing with SimCity, which is
Hmm.
Roller Coaster Tycoon is a game for building theme parks,
Yep.
and SimCity is a game for building cities. Nothing like The Sims.
Hmm.
I was horrified when I realized what The Sims were. I was so excited. I thought it was some more SimCity, and
Yeah.
horrified. It's like you have to make somebody eat. I want scale here.
Yeah.
So
Macro, not micro.
yeah, yeah. So with both of those games, I would always go to the time setting, and I
Hmm.
would try to make it go for as long and as fast as I could.
Yeah.
Not because I wanted immediate results, but
Hmm.
because I was so enraptured by the scale of what happens when you play with time.
Yeah.
So I would want to build a city that lasted 1,000 years, and I wanted to see what the city was like at the end of 1,000 years. That
Hmm.
was that was the thing that I was drawn to, and it's still the thing that I'm drawn to. I
Yeah.
still love exploring, what can happen when you do a small thing, and get results over time.
Yeah. So as far as homeschooling and stuff went, I've had a couple of friends and a couple of people on here. What was the curriculum and how were you kind of given homework tests? What did that look like?
So I was the youngest,
Hmm.
um, which means that at the beginning I was in more advanced classes that my brothers were being taught because they were being taught them.
Yeah.
And at the end, I was being tossed textbooks.
Okay.
So in the middle, there was some kind of measured learning.
Yeah.
Like when I was extra young, it was like, well, little guy's here. We'll just, see if he can hang on to the Latin,
Yeah.
you know. Because my older brothers were learning Latin at the
Yeah.
time. So it's like, yeah, whatever. He'll figure some of it out. And then in the middle ground, when after a couple of years of that, and my brothers had gotten older and were moving on to other things, I was given, some set curriculum of,
Hmm.
okay, maybe here's a video course to go through,
Okay.
and maybe my parents would guide me through some of it, that kind of a thing.
Hmm.
At the end, it was kind of more along the lines of, oh, we got to do this again. Here's a textbook.
Yeah.
Learn what's in it.
Hmm.
And it sounds somewhat negligent, but it's not,
Yeah.
in the sense that it worked.
Yes. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
You had the responsibility of the learning and you figured
Yeah.
it out.
And I was testing post high school every year.
Yeah.
I was getting high grades, high scores every year through school. It's just towards the end. I mean, you know, it's a rough job teaching 3 kids,
Yeah.
so
So
they
your
got a
mother,
little tired towards the end.
I would say so. So your mother and father both took the load of teaching, or how did that kind of work out?
Mom took the heavier load of it. Dad, though, did contribute a lot to the math and science, and to
Hmm.
this day, I remember my first math lesson.
Really? What was it?
Yeah, it was my dad, and he took me to a park and sat me down with crayons and cassette tapes, and he used them to explain addition and subtraction.
Wow.
I think he even explained multiplication. Yeah,
Just
in
getting it
in the
all in.
same lesson, because it's like one crayon, one crayon. Now there's two crayons,
Yeah.
right? And then you could say, okay, well, what's multiplication? It's like, here's two cassette tapes, here's another two cassette tapes, and here's another two cassette tapes.
Yeah.
So that's three groups of two cassette tapes. So how
Mm.
many cassette tapes is that? And I'm
Yeah.
sitting there, 1, 2, 3. And I'd figure it out. And that was my first math lesson. I can still remember it.
That's fantastic. So
Yeah.
did your parents have any previous schooling or education or in teaching, or what was their reason for homeschooling, I guess?
The reasoning, they both did have some education. My mom had, I think, a master's degree.
Okay.
And my dad went for a bachelor's degree. And this is one of those awful things about just not knowing stuff,
Uh-huh.
is he tried to pay for it and he ran out of money.
Oh no.
And he didn't realize that the GI Bill would pay for it, because nobody ever told him.
Yeah.
So he just quit. And like he could have gone for free.
Right.
And yeah, he was going for, I think, engineering,
Okay.
studying a lot of physics and stuff. But the reason why they decided was simple. They said that they saw people coming home from school with shoulders slouched over, looking sad, and they
Mm-hmm.
didn't want that.
Yeah.
And that was their main premise.
Yeah.
Is like, we can do better than that.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And
and
here I am. I think they did pretty damn good.
yeah, and I would say that that's a big thing, especially what's going on right now. Like you see, um, what's happening and what when so my wife nannies, and then you see what the kids what their curriculum is for a day, and they get it done in 2 3 hours, and one of them does well, and then the younger one is picking up a year ahead of what he's supposed to be doing, because so on and so forth. And it's just like there's a lot of different ways to go about this, but the
Yeah, I
homeschooling,
mean,
yeah,
you could argue that I never would have been on TikTok the way I am if it weren't for the homeschooling.
yeah,
Because I mean, when I was a little tyke, my mom went through a phase of like, okay, we've got to handle personal finance, because
that's
we
phenomenal.
grew up fairly low income,
Yeah.
and it's always been a struggle, and like, I still, deal with some of the mental wiring that comes with that. It's a very
Hmm.
tricky thing to understand, is
Yeah.
finances. There's a lot of emotion wrapped up in those thoughts, and it's a
So
hard thing
how?
to deal with. Uh, but my mom went through a phase where she was like, okay, our kids are not going to have the same struggles that
Hmm.
we had. And God bless her, she went and got Rich Dad Poor Dad and some Tony Robbins and a
Hmm.
whole plethora of others.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was at an age, if they weren't being read to my older brothers, they wouldn't have been read to me. Like, I was
Yeah.
pretty darn young, but I was able to soak it up, and
Hmm.
I got interested in it. I was so interested in it that I remember actually going and finishing books that she chose not to finish with us.
Yeah.
I would go pick them up off the shelf and go read them because I was
Mhm.
like, wow, people can be rich. Like, this is a thing.
Yeah.
Like, people can collect lots of money and then do cool stuff with it.
Mhm.
Like, it was fascinating to me.
Mhm.
And you know, other aspects of the poverty mindset I didn't crack,
Mhm.
which meant that, some of my older years in my 20s, I really struggled
Mhm.
because of not understanding some of those concepts. But there was a foundation laid there for sure
Yeah.
that pushed me and kept me interested enough that I could, grow and do the things that I'm doing now.
Mhm.
It kindled a little bit of that fire.
For sure, that's fantastic. So as far as everything being at home, what was done as far as nutrition wise? Did you make your own meals? Was it what your parents did? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, that was another thing. That was a mom thing
Hmm.
where she wanted us to know about eating healthy.
Yeah.
And we grew up real conservative Christian,
Mhm.
so we actually observed a lot of like biblical rules
Okay.
on diet,
Hmm.
and that was my youth that was sort of an important part of the family at that time, and so that was the start of a lot of the food guidelines, which actually
Hmm.
aren't bad.
Yeah.
They're pretty good.
So what's a couple examples of those?
um, well, it's like don't eat crustaceans,
Okay.
right? That's one of the things, and it's like, well, crustaceans are kind of the garbage filters of the sea. And it's I mean, some of the things, like for example, it's like don't eat pork. That was one of them, right? It's like a big reason why pork is avoided historically is because we didn't know how to treat it safely after the fact.
Correct. Yes.
We didn't have refrigeration. We couldn't cook it well. So it's like, you know, there were issues there.
Yeah.
But also a lot of those foods aren't always the greatest.
Hmm.
It's like I would pick beef over pork any day
Yeah.
as an adult. And I
Hmm.
mean I mean I do. I'm a carnivore now.
Yeah.
um but yeah, it's things like that.
Hmm. That's fantastic. So, was there recess? Was there, because from the other people I've talked to, was there a, no recess?
We spend a lot of time outside.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of like learn in the morning, and
Hmm.
when mama loses patience, go play.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like once again, that might sound a little, like, oh, well, that's not that great. But we I think as a whole, all three of us, I think we were taught science 1 year.
Hmm.
No, I learned science 2 years. Because I remember an extra class. But we tested top of, like, in the state tests,
Yeah.
we were at the top percentile in science every
Yeah.
single year because we went outside.
Yeah.
So it was handled.
Hmm.
It's like I remember being like a little kid, and like the first year or two of tests, were very simplistic stuff
Yeah.
because you have state testing to
Right.
make sure it's like,
So,
okay,
did you have to
the
go to
homeschoolers aren't starting
a cult?
a cult or something. Yeah. They're still teaching their kids. Good.
Yeah.
So I would take those tests, and like I remember like getting into the science portion as a little child and seeing like they were asking like what a paw was, and it's like it was like four different images, and it's like at the track of a dog's
Yeah.
foot and like several other images, and I remember being like, even that young, being like, what, why this is a question?
Yeah.
Because it was like, well, my dogs have paws,
Right.
because we had two dogs
For
and I
sure.
played with them all the time, so it was very experiential, the science side
Yes.
of things.
And I know we definitely said we weren't going to get into politics. I don't think this is, but I would say our school system, comparatively to a lot of other school systems, is not good. Like the things that you're saying, like getting
I'm
out,
happy
like
to talk about that.
so like did your mom model it after anything specifically? Just because I know a lot of schools overseas is they're outside, they're on whiteboards, they're interacting, they're learning from stories and activities instead of teaching to a test so that you can get funding for your school.
Yeah, I don't think that she modeled after a particular school system, but I know that she did do research into homeschool curriculums.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of systems that in the side of the homeschool community, they've figured a lot of that out.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I agree. I like America. I really do.
Best place to be right now.
Great. But oof, the school systems,
Yeah.
they've they've got some lack.
Hmm.
I I'm I'm far from somebody who's gonna say, "Oh, I have answers. I want to fix it all."
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's dangerous to assume that you do
Right.
because these problems are much more difficult than they look.
Hmm.
But you know, when you have high schools where people can't read
Hmm.
and schools where first graders and second graders are quoting Shakespeare and they comprehend it,
Yeah.
you know, I think there's something to be gained from
Hmm.
the ones where the first graders can understand Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And I think that can be applied. And this goes back to another aspect of my interest in long-term stuff. Another
Yeah.
thing that's related to that is systems.
Hmm.
And I think there's aspects of the school system that can be optimized, and it's a little terrifying how little it's not being
Yeah.
optimized. It's
Where
definitely saddening.
yeah. What do you think would be like one specific thing to optimize?
So honestly, I think the easiest one, oh, well, it's not easy because paychecks. One of the most straightforward ones is the school hours.
Yeah.
They're just the wrong hours. I mean, somebody that's 15 years old is biologically designed to be more nocturnal.
Hmm.
That's actually their biology. They function better later in the day.
Hmm.
And they have to wake up at 6, 5 a.m., 4:30 a.m., 4 a.m. This is stupid.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, yes, I know we had to farm once. I know that was a thing back in the
Yeah.
day, but we're not farming right now. And when you farm, you wake up and you milk cows. You wake up and you move things around. That's physical motion. That's physical labor.
Hmm.
That's that's a totally different experience than education.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if you were 15, you can wake up and move around. I'm sure that's doable.
Yeah.
But wake up and think, you're just not designed for it.
Yeah.
And I mean, they tested this. I think maybe it was Arizona or New Mexico. I don't remember exactly.
Hmm.
But they took a whole school district and uh, they changed one thing. They said, we're going to start later.
Yeah.
They shifted the hours by like an hour or two.
Hmm.
And they didn't change anything else. And they waited and they looked to see what the results were. And grades went up by I think a whole letter
Wow.
across the board.
Yeah.
And what that means is there's an entire segment of people who got to go to college that wouldn't have been able to go to college.
Hmm.
There's a whole sector of people in America that are living the tragedy of they could have gotten higher education.
Yeah.
But they're not gonna because they had to wake up early.
Hmm.
I mean, that's just dumb.
Yeah. And I know a couple. So my bonus sister, at her school, they started doing late start, and everybody loves it.
Yeah,
And it's just
yeah,
more enjoyable. Like they wake up, they're not rushing out of the house. They have breakfast. They're getting a good start to the day. So yeah.
yeah. And the challenge with it, the argument against it is logistical, where it's
Yes.
like, okay, well, if the kids wake up later, now the adults have to change their work schedule.
Hmm.
And if you change your work schedule, you don't make as much money.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, that's a legit problem. You do need the money.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that could be achieved.
Yes.
I mean, how many kids are getting a lot of attention from their parents coming home
Hmm.
from school in the first place right now?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole nother, you know,
Yeah.
rant right there. But I mean, I think it's a surmountable challenge,
For sure.
and I think there's a lot of challenges in the school system right now that are known problems that are surmountable challenges that aren't being addressed. Those are the ones that really just blow my mind. Those are the
Yeah.
ones that it's like, yes, we have things that we don't know what to do about,
Yeah.
but the science is in on this one. We know.
Hmm.
And those are the ones that bother me.
Yeah. So when did you start realizing that this homeschool thing, was it like elementary school, middle school, high school? When were you like, hey, like what are you guys doing in school? Like what do you guys? When did you start seeing those differences?
Probably 12 or 13.
Hmm.
Yeah, because I had some friends that were in schools, and it's like, huh, this is a different world.
Yeah.
Now, the first time I ever went to a high school, so I went to college when I was 15. So I had my own set of weird transitions. But yeah, I think I was 18 the first time I went to a high school.
Wait. So
Um,
wait. How did the? Let's go back to 15. What
okay.
took place there?
Well, I mean, if you're a homeschooler in Florida, and it's different in every state, I think, because it's a
Okay.
legal thing. If you're a homeschooler in Florida, you can get into college under the guise of dual enrollment, where you take some classes.
Yeah.
And the thing is public schoolers can do this too.
Okay.
But the funny switch is homeschoolers can take as many classes as they want.
And you got a little bit more time.
Yeah. So if you can get the if you can pass the entrance exams to get
Yeah.
into college, then as a high schooler in a public school, you can take some classes.
Okay.
But as a high schooler in homeschool, if you get in, you get in.
Yeah.
So I was a full time. I was full time by 16.
What
Uh,
was that like? How did you? Was it a
it was
community?
weird, man. It was weird.
I have no doubt that that it was weird.
Um, I did real well. The worst class was speech.
Okay.
Um, Admittedly, I shouldn't have taken it when I was 15 or 16. I
Hmm.
could have waited.
Yeah.
But I mean, public speaking is something everybody has to get over.
Yeah.
But I was still under the mistaken assumption that older people um, are smarter than you, you know?
Yeah.
So it was a little disturbing to, be a child amongst, 18 to 22-year-olds. And then it was a community college, and there were plenty of adults taking the classes as well.
Hmm.
So it's like, there's maybe one person your age
Yeah.
also in there if you're lucky. So I did not do well with speech.
Hmm.
Um, in terms of the dynamics, um, it was a little lonely
Yeah.
time to time, but people were nice. I made friends. I met some people that were of similar ages.
Really?
Still
Also
friends with a lot of
homeschoolers?
them to this day. Um, Did you what?
Also from homeschool, or they were in high school doing the dual?
I'm not sure how my friend got in. I don't remember. But
Mhm.
he was there, and I was
Yeah,
like,
that's what matters.
I'll talk to that guy, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was weird. I mean, it was my first experience with anything remotely close to a regular school.
Yeah.
It was the only thing that I knew. Um, and a lot of my friends chuckled amongst themselves, calling it 13th grade.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, I guess this is close enough to the real deal. If
Hmm.
they're calling it that, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. Can I give what sort of specifics could I give about that experience? I mean, yeah, there was definitely the intimidation factor I had to work through. That took me a
Hmm.
long time, like for sure years, for me
Yeah.
to understand that, people of different ages could, work side by side.
Hmm.
Um, that was a big factor. I probably, didn't make as many friends as I could have
Yeah.
because of the age gap. Um, but it pushed me for sure. You
Hmm.
know, I learned things that other people my age weren't learning,
Yeah.
and that widened my scope and gave me a little bit of an edge in some ways, I think.
Hmm. Was it tough sitting in a classical classroom, or what was the classroom like?
It was fine at the time.
Okay.
I couldn't do it now.
Yeah.
There is no way in hell I could take a full-on college course. I wouldn't
Yeah.
do it. I would get up and I'd walk around in the back and I'd stretch and like I'd be a total annoyance.
Hmm.
Um, at the time, it's kind of, when you go into a new situation and you don't know a lot of other situations, you
Right.
just assume this is the way things are.
Hmm.
So I was in this new situation and people sat in chairs.
Yeah.
So I was going to sit in a chair,
Hmm.
like it was as simple as that. It's like,
Right.
okay, well, this is what we do now.
Hmm.
Now I'm a little bit more rebellious.
Yeah. So did professors come up to you? Did they offer extra assistance, or did they just assume that you were some smart kid that was taking college? What was your interaction with professors at that time?
I don't think I got extra. I might have, sometimes you don't know
Hmm.
when somebody throws you a bone.
Yeah.
I did establish some good relationships with some of them for sure. Because if you're there at 15, and you don't have an overarching reason to get out,
Yeah.
you're probably there to learn something.
Hmm.
So they liked that. I
For
was
sure.
I would, take humanities and like humanities.
Yeah.
It's like professors like it when that happens
Yeah.
because it's not all that common.
Hmm.
Um, so I would be interested in the subjects and I try to discuss it with them,
Hmm.
and they would enjoy discussing it, I think.
Yeah.
Um, I had a real good relationship with I was studying music primarily,
Okay.
and I had a real good relationship with my composition instructor, and because I got really big into music composition, and I had private lessons with him, and then yeah, I think he probably would take a little bit extra time
Yeah.
with those, but I think we were both happy with it,
Hmm.
because that was my passion,
Yeah.
and
So
and
where did you discover music? Where was it, a harmonica that you were given at a young age? When did that kind of start?
my mom was a musician,
Okay.
and my grandmother was a musician.
Okay.
So as a little kid, 5 or 6, sitting on grandma's lap, you know, plonking on piano, that was, the first memories that I have.
Hmm.
And then when I was on my ninth birthday, I got a violin,
Wow,
and
that's
that was
difficult.
when my first like for real lessons
Okay.
started.
Yeah.
And then I got serious around about it though, around 15 when I was in
Yeah.
college, and I decided to major in it.
So why? So major in music or major with the violin, or kind of all in one?
Yeah, I majored in classical violin performance.
Okay. So what? I'm gonna think of words now. Why the violin? Was that just the first instrument that you were given at that age, or that was just something that you were enamored with?
So I think that majoring in violin was a bad idea and maybe a good idea too.
Okay.
So I majored in violin because I thought, well, this is the thing I've done the most.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, you have an advantage, so take the advantage.
Mm-hmm.
I did not have an advantage
Yeah.
because there are people that are just amazing at things.
Mm-hmm.
And I was far from the best. Far from the best. And I fought every step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had to work my ass off to survive
Yeah.
in that context. I think it would have made more sense for me to major in something that felt more natural to me.
Okay.
But the violin, it didn't necessarily feel natural. It was just something that I had the most experience with.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that, okay, well, if you have the most experience, you should go with it, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it's just not the case. It's a common thing that people do is they assume it's a common thing in the world of money. It's
Yeah.
like a poverty mindset thing where it's like, okay, I can do this, so maybe I should do this.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously I'm not good enough to do anything else.
Yeah.
Obviously I won't deserve to be paid for any of these other things that I'm less experienced with. So it
Right.
was that sort of conceptualization to some degree. Don't get me wrong, I liked the violin, I was interested in it,
Yeah.
but if I would have known that you can broaden out as much as you can,
Mm-hmm.
um, I mean, hell, I probably would have majored in software development.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. Um,
So it's at this school, was that later in an art school, or the school offered majoring in music? How does that
they
work?
had music majors. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I went to college first at a community college, St. Petersburg College,
Okay.
and then I went to University of Miami. And
Got it. Okay. I was going to say that's pretty extensive community college that offers those programs.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I finished my degree at University of Miami.
Okay. So how did you pick them? Just is that close? Were you
I
at the
wanted to
dorms?
know how rich people lived.
I like it.
That, honest to God, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I could say any number of other reasons, but
Truth.
it would probably be justification, not the
Yeah.
truth. The truth is, like there were these magical people that had stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like, how do they have stuff?
Yeah.
Um, Also, they had a good program,
Okay.
and I mean that was a factor for
Yes.
sure. You know, and I wanted the two things I wanted to understand, and this was my goal going into college, which
Yeah.
I might have met one of them. The goal going into college was understand mastery and understand uh, how people make money.
So when you say
Yeah.
understand mastery, is it mastery as a definition? How to get mastery? I don't know if that's the proper terminology, but what was your definition, I guess?
I wanted to know how to get good at shit.
Okay.
That was my initial, youngster
Mm-hmm.
thought. I mean, I didn't cuss as much then, but but I wanted to know how to get good. Is
Yeah.
like I knew that I was at one level on the violin, and I would
Mm-hmm.
listen to a recording, and it's like there's when you're unskilled at something, there's a certain strange disconnect that you experience when you watch somebody that's good at something.
Yeah.
it feels separate. So it's like I would play and I would hear myself and I would know that it wasn't up to the level that these other people were playing.
Yeah.
And I would hear those recordings and I wouldn't understand the gap between the two.
Okay.
And this happens in anything. Like it can happen in surfing. It's like, you learn how to get on a board and you
Mhm.
learn the basics. And then you see somebody do a trick and you're like, my brain just blew up. What
Yeah.
is this? Like I can't connect the dots between the behavior that I have and the
Mhm.
behavior that they just did.
Yeah. No, I've been working on a movement practice by some Ido Portal coaches, and they send me, "Hey, this is either the locomotion or the type of movement you're supposed to do." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I watch the video, I do the move, I'm like, "Great, got it." And then I put a side by side. I'm like, I don't have it. That
Yes.
is like
Yeah.
I'm doing the same thing, but I'm not even close.
Yeah. I think there's a funny thing on TikTok of like, I got it, I got it, I got it, I don't got it.
For sure.
And you get this experience when you learn new things.
Hmm.
And I wanted to understand the trick.
Hmm.
And of course, as you get older, you figure out there's no trick. Um,
It's
but
unfortunate. It's really unfortunate.
it's a real bummer. There's no magic.
Yeah.
No magic there. You sweat a lot and then it looks like magic. Um, but to this day, that is a big interest of mine, is that
Mhm.
those concepts of mastery. So yeah, it was understanding mastery and understanding money. Those were the
Mhm.
the things that drove me to pick that school.
So what came of understanding of money while at college? What
Oh,
did you
nothing.
see?
Nothing at all. Um, well, it did broaden my perspective,
Okay.
where it's like, because it was consciousness in my mind. It's just, once again, like I said, how when you go into a place, you accept the premise. It's
Yes.
like when I said like people are sitting there, so I just sat.
Mhm.
When I went to University of Miami, it was like, okay, you have to work hard on these things. So I just started working hard on those things, and that was
Yeah.
my new reality. So I didn't go and explore as much as I could have. Like I often say that, like, what would you have done differently when you went to college? Like if you
Mhm.
did it again, I'd be like, probably smoke more weed and go to more parties.
Yeah.
Like that's probably what I would have done. That probably would be wise.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, it did broaden my perspective, where I would see how different people would treat money,
You're right.
and I would understand that, oh, people look at money different ways. Because I think somebody like one time like gave me violin strings, and
Nice.
violin strings are not cheap,
No.
and there are cheap violin strings and really expensive violin strings.
Mhm.
And it was like, I remember him like handing them to me as an afterthought, and I picked up the package and I recognized the brand, and I'd never owned this brand.
Yeah.
Like it's like, being, I don't know clothing, but it's like being handed, Prada shoes or something.
Yeah. We can all agree that with that product top top of the line.
Yeah, something like that. Like I was being handed this set of violin strings, and I
Mhm.
wasn't handed one set. I was handed one set with some extras. And he's just like, yeah, my dad sends these to me all the time. Here you go. And I was like in shock,
Yeah.
because that wasn't my life experience.
Right.
I had a different life experience.
Mhm.
And my dad did great things for me too, of course,
Mhm.
but they were different things.
Right.
And this kid was just sent the most expensive strings you could get
Mhm.
on the daily. They just show up in the mail. It's like, whatever, I got too many of them, here you go.
Yeah.
And it's like, those weird experiences of, a lot of people look at it as like the spoiled kids, right? It's like,
Mhm.
oh, these rich kids. And don't get me wrong, there were some spoiled ones, but it was more the noticing that some people would treat these things as afterthoughts
Yeah.
had a really big impact on me in a good
Mhm.
way.
Yeah.
Um, where, it's like, daddy's car is, just there were so many daddy's cars sitting on the curbs
Yeah.
of University of Miami. Just like the value of these machines was absurd,
Hmm.
Lamborghinis and Ferraris. And something about the casualness that they treated those things with actually, I think, did affect me in a positive way.
Yeah.
It did make me think a little bit more of like, oh yeah, this can be not a big deal.
Yeah.
This can be like not something to obsess over and stress over. It can be just a part of life.
Yeah.
And like there was a kid that uh, he his dad bought him a penthouse in the middle of downtown Miami, and he bought himself a beach house on South Beach with his own money because he didn't like it.
How is he getting his own money? What did he
I
work?
don't know. I don't know. Also, he won the concerto competition. I was like, Jesus, this guy's got it all. Like he was actually really good, and he was a
Yeah.
nice guy.
Yeah.
Um,
Makes it
uh, I
hard to
went, I
hate
went to
him.
his birthday party on South Beach. It was great.
That's super
Um,
cool.
what?
I said that's super cool.
Yeah, it was great. Like he was an awesome dude. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't like stuck up rich. It was he
Hmm.
was actually a really nice guy. But just the idea that like, nah, I don't really like this penthouse in the middle of downtown Miami.
Yeah.
I don't like the traffic,
Not my style.
Not my style. Yeah. So it's like he just got a condo on South Beach, and it's like, fuck it. We'll live there for a while.
So were you living in the dorms at this time? And also, how old were you when you were attending Miami?
I was a normal age
Okay.
at that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I just shared a house. We rented a house because a lot of the kids that are in the last 2 years, because I spent my last 2 years, they don't live on campus.
Right.
So I shared a house with several people
Hmm.
and rode a bike,
Yeah. So I
did
mean,
stuff.
we definitely talked a lot about school, but what were you doing when you weren't practicing violin? When you weren't immersing yourself in learning? What else did you have going on?
Not much.
Yeah. That's why you wanted to smoke some more weed and go to some more parties.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was for sure a workaholic,
Yeah.
for sure, and I didn't know it because I thought that was just how you were supposed to be.
Hmm.
Like I thought that if I wasn't a workaholic, I was a bad person,
Yeah.
and I mean, that's kind of how workaholic starts. Um, and yeah, I was for sure a workaholic at that stage. I was very depressed and I didn't know it.
Okay.
If that
What
makes
did what
sense.
did what did that look like to you now that you look
Um,
back at it?
Looking back, I know I could have been way more functional than I was.
Okay.
Um, I was extremely functional in the
Hmm.
sense that I was getting stuff done.
Right.
Like I would, I worked at like everybody I knew was impressed.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying that as a show off thing
Yeah.
because it was bad.
Right.
Like this was actually bad, by the way.
Hmm.
But like I had an extreme output, right? Like I
Yeah.
would make a lot of things. I would do more than necessary,
Hmm.
because I was trying to do the best I could, and I thought
Yeah.
that was how you did the best you could. Um, Now I know it comes from much more balanced life that you can achieve greater things because if you're more at ease and you're more healthy, your perspective is wider and you're smarter basically.
Yeah.
So you make better decisions. But I didn't know those things at the time, so I was just a workaholic.
Hmm.
And that was when sugar addiction kicked in,
Okay.
because
What was our go-tos?
chocolate, 100%.
Dark
And
chocolate?
if you eat at an Asian restaurant, definitely orange chicken because it's sweet.
Yeah.
And I ate a lot of orange chicken.
Hmm.
But yeah, I was for sure like I became a chocoholic. Um, is when I was younger, like I got a black belt when I was like 18, so I was fit and healthy and
What
stuff.
in?
What?
What was the martial arts?
Taekwondo.
Cool.
So like I had that like bleeding over,
Yeah.
so it wasn't super noticeable.
Hmm.
But I'd say that by the end of the last 2 years, I was borderline anorexic without realizing it.
Wow.
Um, like, not in the sense of there's a lot of different ways you can become anorexic.
Hmm.
And like it wasn't through any body image stuff. It was through sheer negligence.
Yeah.
Is I was a workaholic, and it's like, well, there's some chocolate. I'll eat that and go back to work.
Hmm.
And I would just ignore my body and like get very up in my head. On the bright side, I discovered Joss Whedon and watched a lot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Great show.
There you go.
But yeah, like it certainly wasn't all roses.
Right.
Um, I I I had a very optimistic perspective on life,
Okay.
so these things didn't ruin me.
Hmm.
Some people get wrecked with their experience in college, where
Yeah.
bad things happen and they're just done.
Yeah.
I was optimistic. I had that baseline, so I would do terrible things to myself, but still function. I
Yeah.
would still get stuff done.
Hmm.
When I got out of college, then I crashed.
Okay. So what was were you still doing violin all the way through college? And what does
Yeah,
that look like as far as professionally, as an outlook? Like what do you have after graduating?
not much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're super, super good, you can, get a job in the orchestra.
Yeah.
If not, you're most likely going to become a teacher.
Okay.
Um, uh, I mean, yes, you can join a band and do some other things. Like there's lots of gig work out there. I'm
Hmm.
anybody who wants to make a living in music and that's their desire, they can do it. It's
Yeah.
possible
Just
for
gotta
sure. I
hustle.
would never tell someone they can't.
Hmm.
But it's not, it's thin opportunities in a lot of
Hmm.
ways, and you have to make the opportunities. So, but yeah, when I got out, I didn't get a job doing music because I realized I like that was when I realized I was like, oh my God, I went overboard on this.
Yeah.
I think probably one of the saddest days of my life was walking down the aisle, graduation.
Okay. I thought you were gonna say marriage.
No, no, no. I don't intend to I don't intend to make that my saddest day. I'm going to try really hard to avoid making that my saddest day.
Good.
Um,
So walking down for graduation.
yeah, yeah, like I remember like cap and gown, like walking down the aisle to get my degree, thinking like, oh shit, I missed the point.
Hmm.
Like I did manage to learn mastery, but I didn't learn a lot of broader perspective. I didn't connect with people the way I could have.
Yeah.
I didn't a big part of college working is having opportunities out of it,
Hmm.
and that's from the people, that's from the broader perspective knowledge that you get.
Right.
And I treated college a lot like trade school.
Hmm.
And that's a very expensive trade school.
Yes.
So when I got out, I kind of crashed. I moved to Austin at that time.
Okay. So why
uh,
Austin?
my brother sent I applied for a master's degree
Okay.
in music composition, and I got into the program. And my brother sent me a video. Do you know what slacklining is?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a tightrope but slackline.
Yep.
And my brother sent me a video of him shirtless in a park in Austin, standing on a slackline, balancing, wearing sunglasses, and eating a watermelon with a bunch of hot girls in the background. And like while he was like munching on the watermelon, he's like, "Hey, Josh, so I think you work too hard." And could you come spend the summer with me before you go back to school?
Yeah.
And I called him up and I said, I'm moving.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's
I said,
great
I'm done.
salesman technique.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm moving. So I moved to Austin. I didn't pursue my master's degree. I got a manual labor job working at a rope factory, or a shop where it's like wire rope factory. Sorry.
Okay.
So you know, like the hooks on cranes,
Yeah.
the big old construction cranes that you drop the hook on you, you die, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
No, I did construction for 5 years, and I was always looking to make sure there's nothing fraying up there.
Yeah, for sure. And a swing in one of those is a scary thing.
Yeah.
But somebody's got to attach the hooks.
Okay.
So I learned splicing on wire rope, and I
Wow.
learned how to splice wire rope by hand. So I went from playing the violin to tying metal in knots with my hands.
Little different.
A little different, yeah. Kind of silly when you look at it in retrospect. It's like one slip and it goes all the way through your hand, really.
Yeah, definitely
Um,
not safe.
yeah. One time I was coiling like a inch and a quarter cable,
Yeah.
and it like I was, it's like a warehouse with no AC, middle of
Mhm.
the summer in Austin,
Perfect.
Texas. And like I was like dripping sweat on my gloves and slipped out of my hand. Those things have so much tension, like it popped out of my hand and hit me in the forehead and I passed out.
Oh man, did you have a hard hat
Um,
on?
what?
Did you have a hard hat on?
No, it was like face.
Oh,
It
okay.
wouldn't it wouldn't have done anything
Yeah.
anyways. It's like,
So for people that don't know, inch and a half, like that's thick. Like
yes.
when people
Yeah.
say
So
like an
that's
inch, like
like,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say when people hear like inch as in like a size, like oh that's not that big, but wire, that's thick.
Yes. Yeah. I think inch and three quarters was the biggest one that I could do by
Hmm.
hand.
Yeah.
And to do that, like I had to put it in the vise and like go and get something to stand on that
Hmm.
raised my height by like 4 feet, and like grab onto the wires, split them apart, and then like start the knot at the top and then like jump off of the stool
Yeah.
and pull them down like with my entire body weight, and maybe I would get there. Sometimes I'd have somebody like grab me by the shoulders and shove me down. um Always been a bit of a lightweight.
That's all
But
right.
yeah, like an inch and a half wire that's like just this long
Hmm.
is a heavy weight.
Right, for sure.
Like you can work out with.
Yeah. So what you're working there, and then now you have time. What were you doing with that extra time?
I stared at walls a lot.
Okay.
I like that was when it hit me, from college, where I just like I remember the texture of the wall in the break room, because like I was so low energy that I
Hmm.
would go on breaks and I would sit on the couch and just stare at one place, and that was all I could handle.
Hmm.
um because man, when you don't take care of yourself and you live a life that doesn't work for you, you get drained.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and I tried to like work on musical ideas that I had, because I wanted to be a rock star.
Yeah.
Because who doesn't? It's great. um but at that time it wasn't in the cards.
Hmm.
um and like I was real obsessed with like looping with music.
Okay.
And it's great because an introvert can win at it.
Hmm.
Because it's a way to make an entire band worth of sound with one person.
Yeah. Okay. So
So I spent
for a moment I was trying to. So looping would be you're playing an instrument, and then you kind of hit record, and then that's looping, and then you go down to something else. So you can be
Yep.
your own band.
Yeah, you play one track, you press a button, and that track starts playing back, and then you play something over it.
Got it.
And so I went through that phase for several years, actually. That was kind of
Wow.
my thing,
So
is like,
were you selling that? Were you what did that look like?
I just like go to open mics and go and play occasionally some shows.
Okay.
Never made a lot of money with it, because I'm a horrible salesman. That's I mean, I can now clearly say that, where it's like, well, obviously that's the problem.
Yeah.
Jesus, you got to learn how to sell.
Hmm.
And like I didn't know how to do that business element of it.
Right.
Um, like it wasn't the stuff, like people enjoyed it,
Right.
but I just didn't know how to. And that's the tragedy of a lot of people in music school, is they learn how to play
Hmm.
music, but they don't learn anything else.
Right.
And despite the fact that as a kid I had really wide interests, like I would read and study and explore all sorts of different topics. Um, Going into college kind of like put me on tunnel vision,
Yeah.
in some ways that were good, and in some ways that weren't so good. And
Hmm.
so I didn't understand what it took. So I did the things that I knew how to do, which is I tried to be better,
Yeah.
you know, because it's easy to get stuck in that, where it's just like, well, if I get more skilled, then it'll all work out, right?
Right.
Because that's actually an easy excuse to give yourself, because it's a known quantity. And like, if you've already gotten pretty good at something, now you know how to get good at something. So
Right.
it can actually be an escape to just
Hmm.
try to be better.
Yeah.
I just got to be more skilled. So yeah, that was a lot of years after, actually,
Hmm.
was kind of that process.
So were you living with your brother at that time? Was he still introducing you to slacklining, or what did you have going on in that area?
Yeah. So the first time I moved to Austin, they took me for a run in at the park in
Okay.
Austin, which is Zilker Park, which is like pretty well known park in Austin.
Hmm.
Beautiful place. And um, there was a group of people doing some crazy acrobatic thing, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" And I went over and asked him, and it was acro yoga.
Yep.
And so I was like, okay, when I can afford a hobby, which is great because that was a free hobby.
Yeah. You just need the yoga mat.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but I took that up, and I
Very
got big
cool.
into acro yoga. I did acro yoga for, I don't know, 5, 6 years.
Wow. That's a long time.
Yeah, I got pretty damn good at it.
Very
Um,
cool. Yeah,
yeah,
my wife and I did it a little bit before our honeymoon for about like 6, 7 months, and we could do some stuff. Definitely not any high skill. It was always when we were searching, it was easy acro yoga. But yeah, it's incredible.
yeah, it's delightful stuff. Yeah, there's some shots of me somersaulting up in the air
Very cool.
and tossing other people up in the air. um it's fun. It's a lot of
Yeah.
fun, and that started to kind of connect me back to my body a little bit.
Hmm.
um I studied a lot of that. I started getting into like sort of energy work, things like qigong.
Okay. So
um
what's qigong? Is that breath work, or what's the?
yeah, it's a lot of breath work. It's a lot of like, it's sort of like crossing the line between uh movement and meditation, trying
Okay.
to connect the two, because it's not a perfectly still practice, but it's a very quiet practice. So I utilize that a lot to start to connect to my body a little bit more.
Hmm.
um and qigong related things were probably some of the first things that started to like crack the depression and the fatigue.
Okay. So
And
what do you mean by connect with your body more?
well, it's when you obsess over a concept,
Okay.
which is pretty much all of college.
Yeah.
When you obsess over a concept, you get very in your head.
Hmm.
And it's easy to forget that you're even, here physically.
Okay.
And talking, it's so funny, like being an American, like even just talking about this sounds strange.
Yeah.
But the truth is, like a lot of people are completely unaware of their own body, like what it
Mm-hmm.
feels like, what motion feels like. They don't, you know, feel sensation that much in their own body. So it's like, you know, if a person feels sad, do they feel it all right here, or did they feel it everywhere? And it's a real dangerous experience to just feel sad up in your head,
Yeah.
um, because the head really isn't that well designed to cope with that. I mean, the body is how you usually process emotions.
Okay.
So I was very disconnected from my body because I just gone so hyperlogical.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see here, like sex books, qigong, acro yoga, and Thai massage. Those were the main four that I started studying, like all uh, sorts of ways, and they all added an element of like physicality back into my life that
Okay.
that really enriched my life.
So when you say sex books, is that like the Kama Sutra? What was the not necessarily the interest, but what was the, I guess, direction that it was the knowledge was giving you?
Yeah, I think my favorite get started author is probably Montauk Chia.
Okay.
Um, he wrote I think the simplest book is The Multi-Orgasmic Man,
Mm-hmm.
which is a fairly catchy title.
Yeah.
You,
Good.
you
Good
notice it?
marketing. Good marketing.
Yeah, he got the point across.
Yeah.
So it's like you come across a title like that, and you're gonna look twice.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked twice, and I always thought there was more to the like the sexual experience, shall we
Mm-hmm.
say, than the way we accept it to be.
Yeah.
Because if you think it, and this goes back to my interest in mastery,
Mm-hmm.
is if you think about how life is set up, you can get better at almost everything. There's almost nothing on earth that you can't get better at,
Yeah.
which is amazing. It's
It's a lot of
incredible.
stuff.
Yeah. And there's a couple places where people just go, oh, yeah, it's either good or it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
You either have the experience or you don't. You're either skilled or you're not.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to like the growth mindset stuff. But like I always, something always bothered me about how people talked about sex, and
Mm-hmm.
the way they talk about it is in a very stationary mindset
Yeah.
of like, you either feel these things or you don't. You either like experience these things or you don't. It's good or bad. And there's very little in between. But in the truth, it's a skill just like anything else. So that
Mm-hmm.
was always kind of like something I was mulling over in the back of my head.
Yeah.
And when I found the books, I was like, aha, somebody's done it.
Yeah.
So uh, the those sorts of books, uh, they tend to look at it from sort of a concept of an energetic point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, that super bothers Americans, but it's like, what is it? It's just electricity, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what is energy? It's electricity. And I mean, you feel something when you get shocked.
Yeah.
So you obviously can feel electricity in some form.
Right.
And so there's practices that you can do that can build your awareness
Yeah.
of the sexual experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it can result in much more satisfying experiences that are much more pleasurable, and it just kind of, you can widen your perspective in that area, and I think that's delightful.
Yeah.
And for sure that brought me back to my body a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a very sort of personal thing, where it was a personal physical experience.
Yeah.
And then these other activities like acro yoga and like Thai massage. These were things that I studied that were, people working on each other,
Yeah.
in a more, in a non-sexual way of just like, let's work on the body.
Right.
Let's learn how to get a healthy body.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really good combination. It was for me.
Yeah. So what about Thai massage was so beneficial that did you feel or
Oh man, I love Thai massage. I think it's great.
mm-hmm.
So a lot of Thai massage is built around the concepts of uh, compression
Mm-hmm.
and stretching.
Yeah.
And so it's like Thai massage is often done on the floor
Okay.
instead of on a table, like Swedish massage, the typical thing that you get in America.
Yeah.
And when you give somebody a massage on the floor, you can use your entire body weight. So it's like if you're working on somebody's leg, you
Right.
can just take your knee and put the entire weight of your knee on somebody's leg. And if you do it wrong, they cry, and that's not good. But if you do it right,
Yeah.
it can be a very effective tension release for the muscles.
Mm.
It can be one of the most effective styles of massage that exists.
Yeah.
And it can be super painful, but
Mm.
it's highly effective. And I really like it's sort of about like extended slow intensity.
Yeah.
And that's a really good thing to work on, to build body awareness and to relieve stress and stuff.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So you got all that going on. What did your nutrition look like when you were in Austin?
Yeah, so I all along I knew how to eat healthy. I just wasn't
Okay.
eating healthy.
Yeah.
Because another good thing mom did for us was, she taught us about nutrition to some degree.
Yep.
And so I started trying to eat healthy. And I went through a lot of different phases. I tried different, types of balanced diet,
Mm-hmm.
and I did, standard American diet. And then I switched to, lots of veggies diet,
Okay.
and cut out the fats diet, and
Mm-hmm.
cut out this diet, cut out that diet, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Um, Fruitarian, vegetarian.
How'd that go?
Never went vegan. Never
Yeah.
went full on vegan, but I definitely went vegetarian and fruitarian. Well, I guess fruitarian is vegan.
Yeah.
So I guess I was vegan for a
Hey,
while.
there you go. You
It
made it.
went badly. It went really badly. And I want to preclude this with no judgment on vegans or
Yeah.
anybody who picks any diet, really.
Yeah.
Like that is like the one thing I've learned from my diet process is people are weird, and you got to figure out what works for people.
Yeah.
And it's not the same for everybody.
Mm.
But yeah, so I tried different diets, and I steadily got less healthy.
Yeah.
Um, and I kept trying more and more extreme diets in the direction of vegetarian and vegan and things like that,
So
because
what?
I had tons of
Yeah.
friends in the yoga community, right? So
Yes.
it's like super popular. So it's like, well, okay, this is my influence, and I know that they seem to be feeling good, and let's see if I can go in this direction. What were
Yeah.
you gonna?
Well, no, that's what I was going to say. I was saying what was pushing you in that direction, but you nailed
Yeah,
it.
partially peer pressure.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, the things that I read supported it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if your friends are into yoga and you have a Facebook, then your algorithm thinks that you want yoga related articles, which
Yes.
means that you get diet related articles that match yoga.
Yeah. For sure.
Because algorithms.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, there are a ton of highly logical explanations for why being vegetarian is healthy. There's a ton of them. So, I happened to read those ones.
Yeah.
So I went down that road, and I got worse and worse and worse. Um, towards
What does
the
worse and
end,
worse look like?
yeah, towards the end, it got to the point that I was sick every 1 to 2 weeks. My immune system just disappeared. It just felt like it wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I caught anything that came my way. Didn't matter what it was, I caught it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was legit sick, like every week or every 2 weeks. And I started getting really bloated, and like physical shape has never really been much of an issue for me. I've always been able, like, I'm athletic, so I've
Yeah.
always been able to mostly keep that,
Mm-hmm.
together. But I started like getting really bloated, started like retaining water a lot. Um, I mean, I was still like, chronic fatigue has been a struggle for over a decade.
Yeah.
The fibromyalgia got worse. That's another thing that's been over a decade. Like I deal with constant physical pain.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, never mentioned that.
No.
But
So
you learn to just be like, yeah, that's just the way it is, and
yeah.
you deal with it. But that got way worse. So everything started to hurt, like
So
way beyond.
fibromyalgia is inflammation around the joints and bones.
Nobody really knows. Like we have words where we define fibromyalgia,
Okay.
and I could say those words, but the real explanation for fibromyalgia is when you go to the doctor and you go, it hurts.
Yeah.
And the doctor goes, why? And you go, I don't know. And then they check you out and they go, oh, you're perfectly healthy. And you go, but it hurts. And they go, okay, you got fibromyalgia.
Didn't know that.
And I'm sure somebody on the internet will, destroy me because of that explanation.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, that's kind of what it is like things hurt.
Okay.
For me, it was skin and muscle,
Yeah.
constant aches, constant pains. And it flamed up like you wouldn't believe.
Mm-hmm.
It's really painful. And it very well could be inflammation, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started learning about keto and carnivore stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
started to get a little better.
Who brought you to that space? Because I think you're pretty close to. It's not Saladino. I forget the guy that just came out with the book, but I know he's down in that area. But I didn't know if he was doing seminars or anything like that.
I think I watched a Joe Rogan podcast with Jordan Peterson
Mm-hmm.
where he mentioned his daughter. I
Yeah.
think that was the one. I think I saw that podcast. And he said, my daughter was dying and now she's not dying.
Yep.
And I went on, I found her website, and she said, I was dying and now I'm not dying.
Pretty good argument.
And I was like, well, fuck it. I'm dying right now.
Yeah.
Because that's what it felt like. It, honest
Mm-hmm.
to God, felt like I was dying a slow death.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, also the sugar addictions were worse than ever. Like,
okay. So
I
fruitarian.
fully admitted them at that point, where it
Yeah.
was like, I understood I had no control over this. Like, I couldn't handle it.
So what did a bad day look like?
Well, those big bags of Reese's Pieces?
Yes, I do. I usually see them in Skittle form. That's usually when they enter my life. But yes, I do.
Yeah. So I tried to make sure those were on tap at all times. So it would be like and see, it's like, I'm efficient, right? And I like to manage my money well, so if I can at all. So it's like, buy the biggest bag of Reese's Pieces, buy the biggest bag of straight up. See, like, I don't buy Hershey's Kisses. That's bullshit. That's for pussies.
Hey,
You
I'm
just
on board with
go
that.
to the bakery aisle and you buy chocolate chips.
Yeah.
In bulk. And it's like, I had an addiction, like there was no stopping it.
Yeah, it's a hell of a drug.
And I felt like I had to eat every 4 hours or I would pass out.
Mm-hmm.
Like my I would crash, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, you're living off a constant sugar high anyways, you know, it's like, of course you're going to crash. But and it wasn't every day like that, but it
Hmm.
was enough days that it was for sure uncontrollable, where it was like,
Yeah.
maybe I'd be like, okay, this is stupid. You can't do this all the time. And
Right.
like, I'd stop for 2 or 3 days and then I'd just binge and
Yeah.
eat half a bag or a whole bag. It's like I'm small, so I couldn't like, there's only so much you can actually fit in this
Right.
body, but
Yeah.
I would fit as much as I could, you
Yeah.
know?
Enough to party.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, that's what the sugar addiction looked like. It was
Hmm.
rough. And you know, it's like that thing where it's, you know, you get to the point where it's like your tears are falling down your face and you're like, I know I shouldn't, you know, it's
Hmm.
like like I was doing the whole shebang, you know?
Yeah.
Cuz I knew I didn't want to and I knew I was doing it.
Yeah.
And it's chemistry, man, you know? It's chemistry. Like it's thinking back now, like I was beating myself up because I couldn't stop.
Right.
And it's like I prided myself in my discipline and I couldn't
Hmm.
stop. So like I assumed there was something wrong with my discipline. And looking back now, I'm like, no, you would have died because you didn't have anything else to eat
Yeah.
because that's what you were running off of.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I saw the Joe Rogan podcast that mentioned Michaela Peterson. I found her stuff and like I didn't have as bad of a story as she did. Like she
Yeah.
had it real rough. Are you familiar?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
I'm
yeah. I
all,
mean,
all in
she
on
was
carnivore.
bad
Definitely.
shape. What'd you say?
Definitely all in on carnivore. Lots of research. Definitely a big fan.
Oh, you're carnivore as well?
So actually, right now, I am doing it mainly for TikTok reasons to show people why diets are good, why they work well, and then why they don't. Most people use
Yeah.
them as a way to get to a body weight, and then they're like, I'm going to go back to my old habits. But anybody that I either work with or talk to, I'm like, hey, if you're going to do carnivore, you're most likely going to do it for life for it to be successful. And most people are like, either a diet is good or a diet is bad, but it's usually the goal setting that you put in place. So like if someone's
Yeah.
going to go carnivore, I've done a lot of reading on it, talked to a lot of people like that have dietitians. They're like, yeah, unless they have kidney issues and processing that amount of protein, like it's not going to be that big of an issue just because of the nutrient profile. But yeah, big fan of it.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and you're right. Like it's diets suck, but
Hmm.
lifestyles are great.
Yeah.
And it's like you do have to change your lifestyle to make it work. But yeah, I figure, what do I have to lose? This is stupid. She should be dead, but you know, I'll follow her on Instagram, and if
Yeah.
she ends up in the hospital, you know,
Yeah.
I'll
Fair.
have done it for a shorter period of time than she has. So you
Yeah.
know, I'll just stop when she
Yeah.
ends up in the hospital.
Yeah.
You know, like according to everything that I'd learned, I was like, okay, this is got to be dumb,
Yeah.
but you know, she's getting better results than I am.
Yeah. Well, and also the nice thing is she was poor. Not I wouldn't say necessarily poor, but her approach was not ribeyes every night. It was
That's right.
ground beef. It
Yep.
was so it was
Yeah,
it
she
was
was just
pretty
trying
much
to live.
yeah.
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 And so yeah, I think I started with something similar to what her original uh elimination diet was, which
Hmm.
is basically keto, you know,
Yeah.
like, you know, a sweet potato every once in a while and
Hmm.
greens and meat and cheese, you know, like that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And it started working.
Hmm.
And like I don't know if you've ever had a really big diet struggle, but
Yes.
like, yeah, okay, yeah, it's like you get to the point where for something like that to start working is a miracle.
Hmm.
It's a goddamn miracle where you're like, oh my god, like I can ingest something and it won't harm me.
Yeah.
And like it got to the point where before that I was walking through the grocery store and I would have days when I would walk through the grocery store for 40 minutes with an empty grocery cart. looking at the food going like, what won't hurt me?
Mhm.
Because I realized that, okay, yeah, these things are giving me a reaction. Like that's part of what's going on here.
Yeah.
And I was trying to find things that wouldn't give me a reaction,
Mhm.
which, resulted in some real stupid days of like, there was that yogurt day one time, it's like,
I feel like
let's live off of yogurt.
coming
But
in, going out, same, looking the same.
yeah, but it's like when you're that unhealthy, your mind's not working right.
Right.
You can't even figure out what to do.
Well,
So it's a compounding problem.
absolutely. And when you talk to people about eating healthy, rarely is it about their health, and it's about the scale.
Oh
And
yeah.
just mentioning that, I just like to jump on top of that as well.
Yeah. And yeah, so I just when I tried it and it started to somewhat work
Mhm.
on the keto diet, I was like, okay, somewhat work. I'll take
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
And I understood that the basic premise behind an elimination diet was to figure out what does work.
Mhm.
So I started to like toy with it, and try little things here and there. And just everything gave me a bad reaction.
Yeah.
And it makes sense to me now because I mean, I was probably just in such bad shape that like I could probably eat some cheese now and be just fine,
Mhm.
like because I'm pretty healthy now.
Right.
I was so down in the dumps. Like I was so out of shape physically.
Mhm.
Um like I was still trying to do athletic things, but I
Right.
was just falling apart.
Mhm.
Um and that like anything I ate, just I would feel miserable afterwards, except for a couple of things. So I kept narrowing it down. And I think I spent probably like 3 or 4 months on like something like meat and dark greens,
Okay.
where it was like that narrow.
Mhm.
And like maybe occasionally some cheese. Yeah, I think that's what I ended up doing.
Mhm.
For a while I tried to cheat and use fish sauce, but we all know I used fish sauce because it has sugar in it,
Yeah.
you know. But that was the biggest shocker was I realized like, oh, when you eat meat, and this is a thing a lot of people don't know, is a lot of times when you have sugar cravings, you have a protein deficiency. Straight
Mhm.
up. It's like a lot of people when they like want cake, if they
Yeah.
just go eat something that has protein in it,
Yeah.
some of that goes away.
Yeah.
I had no idea that was a thing. Um, but when you eat as much protein and fats as I started eating, my body started shifting into ketosis. It started
Yeah.
to not need the sugars as much. And I
Mhm.
started to be able to handle the sugar cravings for the first time in my life.
Wow.
Um, and like I could actually exercise choice.
Very cool.
And but still like it just wasn't all the way there.
Yeah.
So Thanksgiving um of last year, I decided that was my last meal
Yeah.
of anything that was, and that was like lamb and cheese.
Mhm.
But after that, I was beef, salt, and water, and I've
Okay.
been beef, salt, and water ever since, except for like I think once I caved and I tried some guac. It was delicious.
Yeah.
It did not go well.
No.
Um, but yeah, I've essentially been beef, salt, and water for almost 12 months now because it's November.
Wow. So
Uh,
what does a week of meal prep and planning look like for you?
Great. I pull something out of the freezer and put it in the fridge and it thaws. And
Yeah.
then I put that thing in a skillet and then it's done.
Makes it pretty
Although I
easy.
have taken up grilling.
Okay.
I've noticed that like the smoke doesn't seem to give me too much of a reaction, so there's a little flavor from smoked using
Yeah.
woods and stuff. So if a friend comes over, we'll grill.
Yeah.
And I've got a friend that's mostly carnivore and a friend that likes the fact that I'm carnivore.
There you go.
So they'll come over and I'll like, you know, grill something.
That's
But
awesome.
it's mostly just in the frying pan.
Hmm.
And
So
it's it's interesting because like I want to toy with it. I'm actually excited to toy with it as my health
mhm,
gets better.
yeah,
You know, like I want to try blueberries, man. I think it could work.
yeah,
You know, a couple blueberries. Um, but when you spend 40 minutes walking around with an empty grocery cart looking for things that won't hurt you,
hmm,
and then you can spend 10 minutes making something and you're done,
yeah,
the relief of that is just so extreme
hmm,
that, you know, like I'm happy to just let it sit right now. Like I have a lot of things going on in life,
yeah,
and like it's pretty wild what's going on with TikTok and everything. And it's
hmm,
delightful and amazing, but it's a lot.
yeah,
So like the fact that I can just go, okay, food is handled.
right, for sure.
Food works. That's it's priceless.
Hmm.
It's priceless for me. I can't like it was one of the biggest level ups for me.
Hmm. So at
Um,
what?
yeah.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, no, no, go ahead.
I was just say, so you, TikTok. When did you get on TikTok, and what brought you there?
So my friend who runs his business through social media,
Okay,
he gets most of his clients through organic marketing on Facebook. He discovered TikTok,
okay,
and he knows me pretty well. And uh, he basically the way he recalls it is he says, "I knew he needed to get on there and do something."
yeah,
That was the way he tells it.
I like it.
Yeah. So at that point, like I'd done lots of content creation. Like I've done some form of content creation since college. It was mostly in the music world.
Hmm.
But you know, like I'm familiar with it, and I'd kind of, you know, just been like, whatever, you know, and I was more trying to take care of my own life and
Hmm.
not like reach out as much.
Yeah,
And that's where I started getting my finances together, started getting my health together, you know, all these things. I just worked on myself. Um, but he convinced me. So like I download the app at like 10 p.m. and then I message him at like 3 a.m. with, oh shit. Because it's the most addictive app I've ever seen in my life.
oh, it's great. Yeah, it
It's
works
amazing.
really well.
Yeah, it's incredible. Um, so I just started exploring things. I
Hmm.
started with things that I'm used to doing. You know, I did a lot of music stuff when I
Yeah,
started. I made, I think, hundreds of videos that, you know, nothing happened.
yeah,
But over the course of my life, one thing that's been happening consistently is I've slowly become a little bit more unfiltered over time.
hmm,
I've slowly said what I wanted to say. I've
yeah,
slowly, you know, become more honest. I've slowly uh, stopped trying to create things that I'm supposed to create, I'd say in quotes,
hmm,
and started to create things that I just wanted to create.
yeah,
And eventually, I think the first video that took off, I think I'd given up on TikTok,
yeah,
kind of, where I was just like, well, whatever, I'll make whatever I want.
hmm.
And well, that's always when it works, is when you make whatever you want.
Yeah,
It's not about the giving up, it's about making whatever you want. And I was I had my finances together and I was looking into real estate and I was
hmm,
considering a purchase. So I went and learned things about real estate, and there were things that, you know, people say that are common things you say that are, you know,
yeah,
like nuggets of wisdom. And I realized some of them were stupid. And I was like, well, that's dumb.
yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, well, let's figure out if this is true. And I go figure out if it's true. And I was like, I'm gonna make a TikTok about that.
Do you remember a couple of those early ones or?
Yeah, the first one was that took off, I think, was the I talked about the saying. There's a saying, you know, the house is the greatest investment you'll ever make.
Okay, yep, I've definitely seen this one.
Yeah. And I think that was the first one that took off. And I just made a spreadsheet. I was like, well, that's not true. And it's like, I understand why the people say it.
Yeah.
It's a good expression to some degree, where it's like, it's trying to convey the value of ownership.
Mm-hmm.
And there is an immense value in ownership. But the actual statement is only true if you invest in the right house at the right time, and you buy it correctly, and you get a deal, and you do all the right things.
Yeah.
Then it's the greatest investment you'll ever make.
Mm-hmm.
So I made a video about that, and that took off. And I have not missed a day since, except for when I did it on purpose for strategic reasons. Occasionally, like once or twice, I decided not to post just to see what would happen.
Yeah.
But I've been posting something ever since then.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's been opening up some new opportunities and whatnot for you.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I've been doing a lot of coaching.
Okay.
And it's so delightful because we're not, I mean, we talk about money.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy to talk about money with people, but we talk about life more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that from the sense of, we try to improve things from a holistic perspective.
Right.
So it's like, we talk about, how to think about things differently. And when I work with people, we might talk about hiring process and meditation in the same conversation.
Okay.
We might talk about money issues
Mm-hmm.
and leadership issues in the same conversation, because stuff is interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
And I find great joy in noticing that interconnectedness.
Yeah.
And figuring out how to improve um, with that knowledge. And what's so damn delightful, I almost said darn, shame on me. Hope you don't mind if I cuss.
No.
Okay, maybe I should get in the habit of asking that ahead of time.
Yeah, it probably, if someone didn't want you to cuss, they should probably let you know early on.
Yeah. Anyway, what's so damn delightful is, I've been making these videos, and it's pretty obvious that I like things that are interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at my videos, it's pretty obvious that I like to think into things far,
Yeah.
think into it deeply, and see different perspectives. So the people that are contacting me want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So we get to explore those things together. And some people are trying to improve their business. Some people are trying to improve their personal life.
Yeah.
Some people are trying to improve their artistic output. It's fairly broad in terms of, like, there's no specific niche in what they're doing,
Right.
but we talk about how they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's utterly delightful to really dive into those things. And it's so amazing to have somebody come back the next week, and because I meet with people regularly.
Yeah.
It's so amazing to have people come back and say, this week was better.
Yeah.
And I can't think of many things more positive than this week was better.
Mm-hmm.
And then to see the next week the same thing happen.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen every time, of course, but
Yeah.
but to move in that direction, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been doing a lot of that, where we try to have conversations where we come away better than we were.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much what we do when I meet with people. And then so that's been a big part of what's going on. And then also I've been working in the background to set up a Patreon.
Awesome.
It's already set up, and
Mm-hmm.
it's in public, but I'm gonna go all the way. I'm gonna turn it into a good thing,
Yeah.
like. So I think I really can. I've been putting together a lot of videos and articles on stuff that I think is helpful.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's where things have been going. There's a lot of opportunity there, with both the coaching and the Patreon. I think there's a lot of opportunity for me, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to help people.
Mhm.
And then I've been working on the podcast as well,
Yeah.
and building that out. And
So if
that's kind of been the focus for me lately.
so if people were gonna find you in those areas, like what's your TikTok, what's your Patreon, and then what's your podcast? What's that gonna be?
Yeah, so my handle across the board is Josh Terry Plays.
Wonderful.
Um, TikTok is usually the place to find me as as a great starting place, but it'd be, Patreon, Josh Terry Plays. Twitch is where the podcast is, Josh Terry
Oh,
Plays.
cool.
Eventually I'll put it on other platforms, but
Hmm.
that's where I've been doing it. And if you want to work with me in coaching, there's a link in the bio on TikTok.
Yeah.
You can just grab a spot on the calendar. I keep it pretty simple.
There you go. Wonderful. So to wrap things up, did you have anything else you wanted to cover?
No, I really enjoyed this.
Oh, wonderful. So the last two things, what's your definition of health? Not the dictionary definition, but what do you believe that health is?
I hope you can edit out pauses.
No, I think pauses are good.
All right, fair enough. I think for me, it's real similar to my conversations. It's not a state of being, it's a direction, and it's where you move towards better. You move towards feeling better the next day than you feel today. And if you're doing that, then you're moving in your ideal of healthy.
Hmm.
Um, because you can't just magically be healthy. Everybody's in a different state. So I don't think a lot of terms of, I am healthy or I am not healthy. Like, I had a stomach ulcer when I was in college, and I still like feel that tension in my belly sometimes when I get stressed. And I'm like, it's way better, you know? I'm moving towards better. And that's what comes to mind when I think about health these days is there any tiny tweak I can do that'll make me feel better tomorrow and then much better a month from now?
Wonderful. I like it. And then what's something from your life that you think someone listening to the podcast would be able to take away as a positive?
Getting better, um it doesn't come from absolute steps. It comes from messy, vague, sloppy steps. It getting better doesn't come from the binary. It comes from learning about the binary and then exploring the gray areas to get there.
I love it. And I think we'll end there.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.